Everything you've been taught about money is a carefully orchestrated illusion. Society tells you a simple narrative. Go to school, get a high-paying career, save your pennies, and spend your life climbing a ladder. You look at the influencers online, flaunting their rented supercars and massive logos, believing that is what peak wealth looks like. But true power doesn't scream. True power whispers. While the modern world is trapped in a cycle of consumerism, trading their time for rapidly inflating paper currency, a quiet syndicate of global elites operates on an entirely different plane of existence. They don't play by the rules of the middle class because they wrote the rules. They don't think in terms of months or years. They think in generations. To the old money dynasties, your salary is a trap. Your savings account is a liability. And the taxes you pay willingly every year are completely optional. There is a three-word financial strategy used by the top 1% to manipulate the global banking system, legalizing absolute tax evasion while expanding their empires completely out of public sight. A strategy so heavily guarded, it keeps families in absolute power for centuries. But to understand how they execute this strategy, we first have to examine the brutal psychology of how they view the asset class and why they want you to stay completely blind to it. The average person is conditioned to chase income. You want a bigger paycheck, a higher salary, a massive influx of cash. But the elite know a fundamental truth. Cash is trash. The moment currency enters a standard bank account, it begins to rot due to inflation, and the government takes a massive percentage of it before you can even touch it. The 1% do not care about income. They care about control. They don't own things in their own names. If you look at the wealthiest historical figures, their personal bank accounts were often remarkably dry. Why? Because owning assets personally makes you vulnerable. It makes you a target for lawsuits, public scrutiny, and heavy estate taxes. Instead, they pioneered the art of the invisible shield, high-end private trusts, shell holding companies, and anonymous foundations. They operate under a strict, ruthless psychological maxim: own nothing, but control everything. When an elite family wants to acquire a massive estate, a luxury vessel, or a private jet, they don't buy it. Their family trust buys it. The asset belongs to a legal entity that never dies, meaning it can never be hit by inheritance taxes. They live like kings, while on paper they technically own absolutely nothing. But this raises a critical question. If they don't take a high salary, and if they don't hold massive reserves of cash, how do they fund their lavish lifestyles? How do they buy mansions, yachts, and empires without ever showing an income to the tax authorities? The answer lies in a dark financial loop that standard banks keep hidden from the public. This is the holy grail of modern wealth manipulation, a framework known inside the elite banking circles as buy, borrow, die. Let's break down the mechanics of this system, because once you see it, you can never unsee how slanted the global playing field truly is. First, buy. The elite take every shred of capital they can find and place it into appreciating cash flowing assets. They buy prime historical real estate, massive blocks of blue chip corporate stock, and irreplaceable private businesses. They do not sell these assets, ever. Selling an asset triggers a capital gains tax, and the elite refuse to pay the system. This brings us to the second most sinister phase: borrow. If they never sell their assets, how do they get money to spend? They walk into the private banking divisions of the world's most exclusive institutions, and they pledge their massive asset portfolios as collateral. They say to the bank, I have $100 million in assets. Do not sell them. Instead, lend me $20 million in cash at a minimal interest rate. To the bank, this is a zero risk loan. To the elite, this is a masterstroke. Why? Because under global law, borrowed money is not classified as income. Loans are completely tax-free. They take that $20 million of untaxed cash and use it to live an opulent lifestyle or buy even more assets. Meanwhile, the original assets they pledged continue to grow in value faster than the interest rate on the loan. They are essentially printing their own money completely legally outside the matrix of the tax system, which brings us to the final inevitable phase: die. What happens when the patriarch or matriarch of a dynasty passes away with millions of dollars in outstanding debt? The average family would be ruined, but the 1% have a final unwritten rule that wipes the slate completely clean.
When an ordinary person dies, the government steps in to appraise everything they owned and strips away a massive percentage in estate taxes. If there is debt left behind, assets must be liquidated under immense stress to pay it back. But when a member of the syndicate dies, a legal loophole called the step-up in basis is triggered. The assets are transferred to the next generation inside the family trust. Automatically, the legal value of those assets resets to the current market price on the day of death, completely erasing decades of built-up capital gains on paper. The family then uses a portion of the tax-free growth, or a highly structured private life insurance policy owned by the trust, to instantly pay off the bank loans. The slate is wiped clean, the debt is gone. The assets remain entirely untouched, completely intact, and significantly larger than they were a generation ago. The children inherit an empire that has never been touched by taxes, holding assets that are now worth double or triple what they were originally. They immediately turn around and repeat the loop. They buy more, they borrow against the new value, and they prepare to pass it down again. It is a perpetual motion machine of absolute financial dominance. It is how names like Rockefeller, Rothschild, and the ancient aristocratic houses of Europe maintain total control of the global board game without ever dropping a tear.
The world wants you to keep chasing paychecks. The system requires you to remain a consumer, trading your finite hours for paper currency while funding the infrastructure that protects the true elite. But now, the curtain has been pulled back. You know the playbook. You understand that real wealth isn't about what you show the world. It is about what you control behind the scenes. The choice is yours. You can continue to play by the rules designed to keep you on the lower tiers of the ladder, or you can begin to study the blueprint of the masters. This is not a channel for the ordinary. This is an archive for those who intend to command their own legacy. Subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, and study the unwritten rules before they change again. Welcome to the Opulent Syndicate.